Welcome back to the channel, everybody. It's me, Stateside here, and we've got a new video. We're going to be taking a look at every Chelsea signing under Todd Boehly and whether it's been a hit or miss. Let's go ahead, let's get right into it. If you enjoy any of this video, leave a like down below. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss a video, and let's get right into the action. Starting off with our first signing is Raheem Sterling, a man heading out the door, bought in, 56.2 million, was one of the first signings of the Todd Boehly era. I think he's been solid during his time with Chelsea. I'm not going to slate him too hard. I think that he's done a job. He's done well when he's given opportunities. Was the third highest scorer or third most goals contributed last season for Chelsea, despite it being an off season for his standards. So I think Raheem Sterling belongs in a solid position for his time at Chelsea over the few years, rather than just this recent time, which you would say this looks like a poor business issue here. But there's so many other things other than just the signing of Raheem Sterling at face value. Kalidou Koulibaly for 41.9 million was a disaster. Unbelievably poor signing for Chelsea. Don't think it belongs anywhere else or even in any other conversation. He's definitely not good business from Chelsea at all. Up next is Slanina, and this is tough. I want to put him here, but I think he probably belongs here. Just because there's so many goalkeepers in that squad, and I just don't think he's going to get opportunities. So I'm just going to say he'd be a good second string in the future. So that's what we're going with. We're just going to put him at second for now, or in the third spot for now. Again, brought in for 9.09 million. And so no matter what, they'll make a profit from selling him. And so that's why I've kind of put him in that third spot. Up next, we've got Chukwuemeka for 18 million. Again, another one that just needs a little bit of time. This is going to be a common trend in this video. A lot of these players are going to be turned around for profits in the coming years. But I'm going to put Chukwuemeka in that third spot as well. Cucurella, I'm going to mark as a solid player. He's been a decent signing, been a decent servant for Chelsea. Obviously, for 65.3 million euros. We're working in euros when I say all these prices, just so you know, we're working in euros. I think Cucurella belongs in that tier as well. Just part of the conversation there. And he's taken the starting position off of Ben Chilwell, so that's kind of something you have to take into account as well. Casade, I'm obviously not sure about the Italian pronunciation of his name, but Casade, I'm going to put... He did play a few times. He did come back from loan at Leicester this past season, and so now I'm going to say go ahead and keep him. He's one for the future. Wesley Fofana, I'm going to say it's poor business. I know he's probably going to be starting a lot of games this year, but for 80 million, he should have hit the ground running. I think maybe is the expectation for that kind of price tag. You just expect more from a center back, especially. I think he was transfer record at the time. May still be the transfer record. Just hasn't played enough minutes for me. Aubameyang, disaster. I'm not even going to go into it. 12 million. It doesn't matter what the price was for that signing. It was an unbelievably bad signing for Chelsea. Badiashile for 38 million is another one I'm putting in poor business, just because the center backs that Chelsea have signed haven't been great. They haven't really had an identity at the back besides Thiago Silva, I'd say, and so that's why I'm just going to put Badiashile then there at 4 as well for poor business. Hopefully they prove me wrong. I really don't know who's going to start next to Fofana this year. We'll just consistently, I should say, but we'll just have to wait and see. David Fofana for 12 million, another player I'm just going to put in that third spot. I don't see enough game time from a lot of these guys. I don't see them getting minutes anyways. So I'm just going to say for the future, really is just them turning a profit on these players more than anything else. And that's exactly what's going to happen with Santos as well. 12.5 million. I think he's on loan again to Strasbourg in Ligue 1, a affiliate club of Chelsea. Just needs time for the future again. I don't really have much else to say. Mykhailo Mudryk, well, I'd love to put him here and a failure as well. He is getting minutes still. He still is getting opportunity. So I'm just going to say he's poor business. Until he proves that he's a disaster by being sold or by being loaned out, he's going to be just poor business for the time being as well. Madueke, this one's tough because I know he's kind of being leaned towards out the door. I think he's a solid player. I know maybe that's a little bit biased saying, recency bias because of his performance against Wolves at the weekend. But I think, I think he's got a spot in the team. He's a right winger that's left-footed. I know they just brought in Pedro Neto. We'll talk about him later. But I do think Madueke should be that starting right winger for Chelsea. Malo Gusto, easy first player in the Unreal signing section. Unbelievable talent. And I think that it doesn't really need much else to be said. I think he's unbelievable and has lived up to everything you would expect, especially a player having to jump right in due to Reece James injuries. Up next is poor business in Enzo Fernandez, 121 million euros. A record signing once again for Chelsea. Just just hasn't lived up to what he needs to be. I think he's just kind of like a player that you can get pretty easily on the market nowadays. And so I just think that he's, for that price, I think you could have gotten Bruno Guimaraes at the time. I know he was coming right off a World Cup win with Argentina at the time. I don't think it's worked out quite as Chelsea fans had hoped that it would when he was brought into the club. Jimmy J. Morgan, it's an undisclosed fee. He was signed from Southampton. So I'm just going to say for the future, needs time. There's not really much else to say about him. Okay, he's in the U21 team. That's about it. Nicholas Jackson, possibly a hot take here. He's a starting striker for Chelsea. So he's been solid, whether you like him or not. But for 47 million, you'd expect a little more, and that's why he's not an unreal signing. But for 47 million, he's a solid player. And so that's why I put him in that solid category. I think he's been pretty solid. How many times can I say solid in this video? Keep a counter. Not really. But yeah, decent player for Chelsea so far. And I think we'll see much, much better things as they hopefully have a consistent squad around him. And Nkunku, despite him being an older player in the squad for 60 million, he's been injured. I'm going to say he needs time to prove that he's a solid or an unreal signing for Chelsea. I think he has the potential to be, come the end of the season, be up here. But for now, he just needs time. He needs, he's for the future, not for the future, but he does need time to prove that he's a great signing for Chelsea. Diego Moreira, brought in on a free and then sold for 2 million. So I'm just gonna say he's been a disaster just because he didn't play any for Chelsea. He's gone to Strasbourg for 2 million euros. So just that's really all there is left to say about it. Angelo for 15 million. I think he's gone on loan a few times. Hasn't really played for Chelsea. Doesn't look like he'll play for Chelsea. So he's gonna be in that poor business section once again. Probably gonna end up at Strasbourg on a permanent at some point as well. Ugachukwu is another one. He's been brought in for 27 million, young player. I think he's on loan at Southampton right now. Just for the future, once again, I think you give him time. I think he could be a success at the club. It's just whether or not Chelsea have the time and patience to let him develop and flourish into their team. Axel Disasi, you know, Badiashile wasn't a success, so they went and bought his partner from Monaco for 45 million when they had already bought Badiashile. So Disasi, another poor business from Chelsea. I just don't think he's a great center back. Again, I think center back situation for Chelsea is really not as good as it looks. So it'll be interesting. But let's go ahead. Let's move on to Robert Sanchez. Robert Sanchez, I'm sorry, you're poor business. 23 million, doesn't matter. You have not been a great goalkeeper. You lost your starting spot last year. You're very fortunate there's a new coach at Chelsea that has given you another chance because you can play the ball with your feet, but you can't use your hands. And you've already proven it this year. At the start of the season, I think it was against Manchester City where he probably should have saved Kovacic's goal. I think it was Kovacic's goal that he should have saved. I can't quite remember. But again, another player that's just not been great for Chelsea. Caicedo and Lavia, this is the midfield partnership that Chelsea needs to run with Palmer in front of them. Caicedo and Lavia combined for very expensive prices. 116 for Caicedo, 62 million for Lavia. I say put them in the midfield together and let them work as a double pivot because neither of them can play as that lone six, I think. So let them work together in that defensive midfield role, midfield positions. I think you could get a really good work out of both of them. Up next is David Washington. I don't know. 16 million brought in from Santos. Looks to be a pretty talented player, but again, he's not going to get minutes this season, so it really doesn't matter. We'll see him out on loan to Championship or Strasbourg or something like that in the future, but they can only loan so many players. It's really interesting because, like, when did they start selling some of these guys? Is Jordi Petrovic going to be sold? Is Fofana going to be sold? Is Nkunku, not Nkunku, some of these players going to stay U21? It's really going to be interesting to see what happens this season with a lot of these players that are available. Up next, we have Petrovic, and I'm actually going to put him as the first goalkeeper in solid just because I think that he should be the starting goalkeeper for Chelsea. I think that it just kind of makes sense to me because he was performing so well at the end of last year. He's good at, doing what a goalkeeper's job is, and that's keep the ball out of the net. Considering how bad Chelsea were defensively last year, he kind of solidified things as they kind of, consistently got results at the end of the year. Petrovic was in net for those performances, and I think that he should continue to be in net for Chelsea. I think it's a little absurd that Sanchez got his spot back, as I mentioned earlier. Another unreal signing for Chelsea is Cole Palmer. Obviously, Cole Palmer is going to be in this list in the spot that he's at. just not much else to say. He won Young Player of the Year, 47 million bought in from Manchester City. Unreal talent, unreal talent. Up next is Kellyman, another one goes in there. Tosin Adebayo. This is actually really bad because he's not going to start for Chelsea, but considering he was a free transfer, he's not poor business, and he doesn't need time because he's a little more experienced with Premier League experience. He's going to be solid off the bench, play a lot of minutes in the Conference League. I think he's solid for Chelsea and what they need going forward. However, why not just keep Trevor Chalobah in the lineup then? They haven't even sold Chalobah. He's just running away with the reserves. And it doesn't make sense to me why Trevor Chalobah is not on that list. I'm not listing him. Obviously, a solid instead. It doesn't make sense to bring in Adebayo if you have Trevor Chalobah on your bench anyways. And arguably, Trevor Chalobah would be starting if it came to it. Dewsbury Hall for 35.4 million euros, kind of a same situation. He was brought in for 35.4 million. They had just sold Conor Gallagher for 7 million more. Conor Gallagher's much better than a 7 million more difference for Chelsea at that center mid position. I think Dewsbury Hall's a decent player. Obviously, they play slightly different positionally or roles in the midfield, Gallagher versus Dewsbury Hall, but I still think Gallagher is much better player, and I would have rather seen him in the Chelsea midfield, even as a neutral, not as playing against, but as a neutral. Obviously, I'd like to see Gallagher play instead of Dewsbury Hall. It'd be much better side, I think Chelsea would be with Gallagher continuing in that midfield. Up next is Mark Guiu, and I originally put him as needs time, but for 6 million, he's going to be your backup striker all season. He's solid. He's a really solid player. So, of course, he's going to go there. Up next, we have Renato Vega for 14 million. I think, may already be on loan. Another player that just needs minutes. So, we'll just see what happens there with Chelsea. Caleb Wiley, another one, needs minutes. Jorgensen, 24.5 million. You already have all these goalkeepers on the books. Obviously, I think Sanchez should be sold. I think Jorgensen wasn't really a necessary buy. And Slanina probably would have been a fine as a 2. And Petrovic would have been fine as the 1. Honestly, they need a world-class goalkeeper. I've mentioned that before, but it is what it is. Working with what they've got. These are poor business. Some are solid, some are not. But that's just the way things go. Now we've got Aaron Anselmino of Boca Juniors. And then he was immediately loaned back, 22.5 million. So big things, 16.5 million. So you expect big things from him. It'll just be interesting to see what Chelsea get out of him, if anything, in the future. Maybe they'll sell him. We'll just have to wait and see. And then Pedro Neto, he is going to be poor business. I don't think Pedro Neto is a necessary signing, especially when you have Madueke, who's probably the better player and better winger than Pedro Neto. I don't know where they're going to play Neto. I think this is why Madueke is heading out the door, and it just doesn't make sense to me because you're paying this premium fee for Pedro Neto, whose output is just not what it needs to be for that price tag. But anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave a like down below, hit that subscribe button so you never miss another video, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.